Hello and welcome to Thrive TV. Today I'm with Spencer, who is Education Officer at Brading Roman Villa, and here he is to tell us a little bit more about it. Thank you, Spencer.
What we have here is the new cover building over the third building that was put here. This building, this was put up in 2005. It is an ecologically friendly building, which means that it is sustainable. It has a grass roof and there are photovoltaic cells on the roof over here, as well as air source heat pumps, which are used for heating the building.
As we look across from Brading towards the sea, we can see Brown's Golf Course and Yaverland in the distance, and up until 1880 the sea would have come in here. As we keep moving round to the left, we've got Culver, and to the left of there we see some trees. Now, before these trees were there, we think that there would have been a view across to Bembridge Harbour that the Romans would have been able to see from their front door.
Now come inside the new cover building, and you can see that it is a large open space and it allows the visitors to see the remains very, very clearly. What we've got here is a model showing what the cover building protects. What it is that we have only got the bottoms of the walls, so we don't know quite how high the walls were, and to some extent we're guessing about the pitch of the roof. Yes? We're also a little uncertain as to what the rooms were used for. If you think about it, all the things that would tell us what a room was used for, beds, chairs, tables, wardrobes, all these things are made of wood. These rot and disappear. What we have here is a reconstruction of what we think the villa would have looked like in the 4th century. We are standing in a build. We're standing in this. Okay, the cover building goes over the top. The car park is down here, and it was in the car park that the Iron Age village would have been. We didn't find much at the Iron Age village, only a couple of posts and a ditch. And would you like to come and have a look at my ditch? Is not much of a tourist attraction, so that is all covered over. When you arrive, you park the car over here and you walk up, and then there are electric doors. Okay, so the cover building goes over the top. Okay, now then, this particular reconstruction is excellent because it shows that although we call it Brading Roman Villa, it was in fact a farm. And as we look around the outside, there are plenty of things which suggest that this is a farm. We've got some crops growing over here. Yes, we have a water supply here, which goes to the Nymphaeum. We have the farm buildings here and here, but this building here is the one that would have been used by the owner. And we think that the owner used it on their own. It was not used by the workers during the main part of the year. The main reason why we think that it was used just by the owner is something we'll come to later on, and it's a fabulous local story. We said that there was a fabulous local story about why we think this villa was used just by the owner, and this is it here. Now then, even without the label, I'm sure you'd have been able to spot that this is a lock. Now then, if you think about it, when do you need to lock your door? Many people would say you need to lock it at night. In fact, you don't need to lock the door at night. You can manage with a bolt like you would on a toilet door. There are in fact lots of houses today, quite surprisingly, which don't have a lock. Buckingham Palace, where the Queen lives, doesn't have a lock. 10 Downing Street doesn't have a lock. That's because at night there is always someone on the inside to put the bolt over. You only need a lock like this when you leave the building. Now then, the fact that this has a lock suggests that this building was used and left. So, Brading Roman Villa was in fact the first holiday home on the Isle of Wight. One of the key features of a Roman house were the mosaic floors. The Romans liked mosaic floors because they could be kept clean. You can wash a mosaic floor in the way that you can't with a mud floor. Now, the Romans wanted to keep the floors and themselves clean as a way of preventing disease. Before the Roman times, the people here believed that it was evil spirits that made you ill, so they never bothered keeping clean or indeed examining bodies. They just thought it was a spirit. The Romans, of course, thought that it was natural causes. And if it's a natural cause that makes you ill, then it's something you can do to stop yourself getting ill. You can prevent disease. So, keeping the floor clean and, of course, Roman baths. Now then, that was a practical part of the mosaic floors. They also used the mosaic floors as a way of demonstrating their wealth. If you were to look at this, and you were to be introduced into this room, the first thing you would probably ask is, what's that? What does that mean? And so the mosaic floors show that the owner must have been educated in order to explain what was going on. Okay, this is the most beautifully preserved mosaic in the whole villa. The thing which attracts people's attention often is Medusa, and she is in the middle here. Okay, now then, as a goddess, Medusa had two special powers. She had snakes for hair, and everyone she looked at turned to stone. Now then, these are not sort of very pleasant qualities, not the sort of thing that you would like in a friend. However, almost every Roman villa does have a Medusa mosaic. So, if she's not very nice, why would they always choose to have Medusa in their villa? The reason is exactly the same as why Chinese buildings have dragons and why churches in the Middle Ages had gargoyles. The dragons, the gargoyles and Medusa are all doing the same thing. They're protecting the villa from evil spirits. This room here would have had the mosaic put in at the same time as the part which has Medusa, but very sadly, almost all of this one has disappeared. What we think is that in the 1000 years the villa was not used, it became buried under the earth, and in that soil trees grew, and the tree roots went down and they broke up the bits of the mosaic which are missing. Now then, when it was discovered, the Victorians recognised that these people, these Romans, were very rich. And what did rich Romans have? Rich Romans had underfloor heating. So what happened here was that the Victorian archaeologists dug down to look for the underfloor heating. They didn't find the underfloor heating. And of course, that goes back to what we said earlier about the lock. Because there was no underfloor heating, we think they lived here only in the summer, so Brading Roman Villa was the first holiday home on the Isle of Wight. What we have here is a corn drying oven. Now then, obviously it's called a corn drying oven because it dries corn. Corn, after it's harvested, if it's not dried properly, can get a mould called ergot. And this mould, when the corn is made into flour, causes the bread to give you mind-altering experiences. Now then, in recent times, people might have found this a very pleasant experience. However, the Romans were very religious, and they thought these out-of-body experiences were bad. They thought that they were being possessed by evil spirits. So they made sure to dry the corn in a corn drying oven so that it did not get this unpleasant mould. What we have here is a new information board about the well. This well, in fact, is outside the building. The reason why it's particularly interesting is that we think that it dried up. And so, instead of being a 25-metre deep well, it became a 25-metre deep rubbish bin. And so what happened was that it got filled up with the sorts of things which people throw away. And whilst these things are not valuable, they do tell us a great deal about the people who lived here. We can tell, therefore, that the people here hunted because, rather shockingly, found the skull of one of the hunting dogs. We also found the skeleton of a teenage boy. Now then, obviously, That's what we found. We're not at all sure whether the dog fell down and the boy tried to rescue it and they both died. We certainly think it's unlikely to be a punishment because, of course, as we spoke of earlier, the Romans tried to keep the water clean so that they did not become sick. The room we're looking at now, this one, in fact is quite interesting. Although it looks plain, it has one interesting feature. What does it not have that every other room you've ever been in has? Yes, that's right. It has no windows and no doors. With no windows and no doors, we think that this was the space that the people here would have stored their food. With no windows and no doors, that worked against rats and mice. They would have got into this room by climbing down a ladder from above. Components round the museum have a different theme. This one is called Romans and Countrymen, and it has a number of items which show that the people here would have been very rich. There's a pair of bronze tweezers. Clearly, if you have time for beauty, you have time for leisure, so perhaps that's not connected so much with work. We also have a selection of spoons. Remember that without spoons, it would be impossible to have things like stew and soup. So, spoons indicate that the Romans must have had quite advanced culinary skills, the sorts of things that we would accept today. On the bottom row, there are a collection of bronze bracelets. These, like the tweezers, are clearly not essentials to life, but indicate that the people here must have been wealthy, had a wish to show it, and also time for leisure. My main interest with the villa is education visits, and this is a cabinet with primary schools I don't have anything to do with because death is not a big part of the primary school curriculum. What we have on the shelf are 2 cremation urns, and this obviously tells us that the people here seemed to cremate their dead rather than to bury them. Now then, one of the peculiar things about the whole area is that although people have lived here for 5,000 years, we have in fact only got the bones from 8 different bodies. So we're not at all certain what has happened to the bodies. We know that many of them cannot have been cremated, otherwise, like these, we would have found the urns. Okay, so what we have here in the cabinet are some of the large pieces which would have gone to make the floor in the hypocaust. This one is particularly interesting. The first thing that you notice are, of course, the studs. Okay, and these small studs would have been what was in the bottom of the shoes to stop them wearing out, or perhaps to give them a degree of grip. Once you've noticed the studs, the next thing is that here there is a toe, yes, and here some animal prints. So when I'm working with the primary school kids, we talk about what might have happened. Clearly, it's possible that a young boy walked across the damp floor in the way that you might with a bit of concrete, yes, and that his dog had been there too. When the Victorians did the excavations, one of the things that they found were hundreds and hundreds of these. They are, in fact, stone roof material. The man who helped us with the archaeology in 2010 thinks that the whole roof would have weighed 120 tons. So this tells us a very big story. If you are building something with such a solid roof, that suggests that you are building because it is safe to stay. You do not build in stone and you do not build in that quality if you're in a war zone. This tells us that Isle of Wight must have been peaceful for hundreds of years.